All right, so welcome. Today we're going to talk about the process of coaching, specifically how do you set up a process that's practical, that gets results for clients, and most importantly, sets you up as somebody who's credible. Uh, what you see on this screen is the member area. If you join the Center for Executive Coaching, which I hope you will, I just want to give you context about where this would fall in the program. You'll see a lot of tabs here on our main tab, Center for Executive Coaching. When you join, we want you to start with what we call active inquiry. There's a good 6 or 7 hours on what we call the foundational coaching conversation. And then we move into the process of coaching, which is what we'll talk about today. We have just about an hour and a half. In the program itself, there's 4 or 5 hours about the process of coaching. Okay, so just know today will be quite abridged, quite quick, but I think it will give you a sense of what it really takes to set up a coaching engagement. From there, the curriculum moves to third-party assessment tools. We essentially give you a survey course on how to use robust, validated, reliable data to understand your client, what makes them tick, and use that to accelerate the coaching and help your client have insights to be even better. And then from there, I'm clicking the tab Coaching Solutions. One of the things that sets our program apart from all the others is that you're going to get a library with ready-to-go webinars, resources, tools, and actual coaching solutions to work with clients on just about any issue they have. Once we get the foundations out, including the process of coaching that we'll cover today. So for instance, if your client has a behavior they need to change, which we see a lot, for instance, with highly technical or scientific individuals who might not have received training in the leadership skills, or they have some rough elbows, behavioral coaching can be helpful. If they have limiting beliefs or perceptions that they might shift to be more effective, we have a whole toolkit for that. Helping with communication, communicating with more impact, more simply, more powerfully. How to coach someone through a high stakes influence conversation that they might have, and on and on. Frankly, you can go onto our website and get a whole video overview of all of the different solutions we offer. And in fact, just quickly, that is why I'm here today, right? The reason we offer these monthly master classes, it's really for those of you who are already successful professionals, you're thinking about getting into coaching, and you want to see if our program is right for you, right? So my goal at the end of this is that if you're interested, you'll reach out one way or another to have a conversation, answer any questions you might have about our program. Currently, our next 3-day virtual seminar, all our seminars are virtual right now, will be July 26th through the 28th. If you'd like to attend, you can get certified as an executive coach with us. And you can also add the whole International Coaching Federation, ACTP, if you know what that is, if you want an ICF designation as part of that. And of course, you can join our distance learning program anytime as well. We have 3 tracks of webinars now, 3 tracks of 3 hours of webinars every week, meaning there's 9 hours of webinars every week. There's a track that starts at 10 a.m., 10 to 11 a.m., 3 days a week. There's one that is from 1 to 2 p.m., 3 days per week. And there's one that's 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time, 3 days per week, all via Zoom. So if you prefer to learn and get certified through that approach, or you want the ICF designation and you need those training hours, this would be good for you. You can join anytime. It's rolling admission. We get you into the program. We give you an overview. There's an overview video, and then we have an orientation call. Okay, so that's the goal today for me. Selfishly, the goal for you is I want you to learn how to set up an engagement that is practical, that gets results for your clients, and again, establishes you as somebody who's credible and knows what they're doing. Okay, but if at the end of this you'd like to reach out, you can just go to our contact page, info@centerforexecutivecoaching.com will get you to me. My cell phone is right here as well, okay? So with that, let me jump in to the content that we're going to cover today. So we're gonna look at the coaching process from 3 different ways, okay? The first way is what I call the boring technical approach. I'm not gonna cover it too much. You should see it on your screen. Let me know if you don't see a slide that says the coaching process on the screen. By the way, my name's, I should have introduced myself. My name's Andrew Knightlick. I'm the founder and director of the Center for Executive Coaching. We've been around training coaches since about 2002. We formally incorporated in 2006. My own career trajectory is that I got out of Harvard Business School, was a management consultant for a number of years. And what I discovered was that clients most appreciated and valued the one-on-one conversations. I didn't even call it coaching back then, but that's essentially what it was. They sort of already knew the answers to the very detailed PowerPoints and databases and Excel spreadsheets that we presented. And I once asked a client, I said, well, you told me you know the answer. You just spent $150,000 on this project. Why'd you hire us if you knew the answer? And what he said is what got me into coaching. He said, Andrew, I do know the answer. What I value most is I need to figure out how to make that answer happen. And there's a lot of people gunning for me. This is a highly political organization. What I value most are my conversations with you, where you serve as an objective, safe sounding board. You ask great probing questions that help me have insights. I don't really have anything like that. So anyway, that's what had me become a coach. I still have a coaching practice that takes up a good amount of my time as well. Currently, I seem to be attracting clients who are in growing companies, often family-owned businesses, sometimes technology companies, and they're in new roles, or their company is growing so quickly that they need some support, okay? So that's me. The Center for Executive Coaching has established itself, as having trained about 2,500 professionals from 32 countries. We're an ICF accredited training program. And we specialize in working with already successful professionals who want to get into executive leadership, career, and even business coaching, right? So if you've had a passion for developing other people and you're already successful, high-end professional, this could be the place for you, and you can just reach out. So let's talk about the coaching process. Again, in our program, we will have already covered how to coach, how to sit down with a client for 15 minutes, a half hour, an hour, whatever it is, and have a really powerful coaching conversation. That's the what. That's the what we do. But we also have to look at the how, because a robust coaching engagement isn't just one session. You have to know how to set up an engagement. Today, I'm going to show you two very practical ways to do it. And this first thing that you see on the screen is a little bit theoretical, but still important. So I'm going to go through this the quickest. Ask questions anytime that you'd like through the chat. We're not using Q&A. And of course, I'll take questions at the end, or anything you want to talk about in regards to coaching. So what you see here is roughly an 8-step coaching process. The first step in the process is coachability. If coaching were a superhero, its kryptonite would be coachability. You simply cannot coach someone who's not coachable, right? And it's not that hard to do. You don't need to give someone a formal assessment. You don't have to ask tough questions. Essentially, someone who's coachable has a problem or an opportunity that's really big, something they really want to solve, enough that they bring an outsider like me in. It's really the same as going to the doctor. Nobody wants to go to the doctor, but we will if we're in enough pain, if we don't feel well enough. With coaching, it doesn't have to be a disease state model. It isn't. They either have a challenge or something really exciting like an opportunity. So that has to be there, and there has to be permission, right? If you try to coach someone without permission, maybe you've tried this with a spouse or a child or a parent in your life, and you've tried to coach them. You knew they needed coaching, but they didn't give you permission. We call that nagging. That's not coaching. Okay, so that's what coachability is. I could tell if a potential client calls me and says, I think I'd like some coaching, I can ask some questions to understand how big the problem is. I can hear how open they are to receiving coaching. This isn't very difficult, but you just have to know that with busy executives and leaders, they're going to go in and out of coachability all the time. We have to be aware of it. It's shaped like a door here in this slide, because if this door closes, the coaching has to stop. So that's number one, coachability. It's the great strength of coaching. It's the great weakness of coaching as well. Again, if you just can't coach someone who's not coachable. Let me stop there. If you have any questions about what I just said, type them into the chat. It's actually quite profound, because it means your marketing has to be set up, whether you're an internal coach or an external coach, such that you attract people who have a problem that they realize they have that's big enough to justify working with an outsider. The second piece that I want to cover on this slide before moving on is contracting. It is incredibly important when you're working with a client to take some time to really contract certain things. And for me, the biggest element that I want to contract with somebody is whether there's a big enough opportunity to justify a coaching relationship. And this gets to a lot of your questions about whether somebody's coachable or not, right? To me, if I can justify that there's a big enough current state and future state, that is point A and point B. They're at point A, they want to get to point B. If it's a big enough gap and I can feel their attitude that they're coachable, then I think it's going to be a good engagement. And quite frankly, I don't want to take any engagement on where I don't see a 10 times return on fees. Okay, so currently I charge about $25,000 for a 6-month engagement. If I don't hear a $250,000 opportunity or return from the client through the questions I ask up front, I don't want that engagement. There's too many coaches out there who settle for clients that don't have a big enough issue, that don't have a big enough goal, right? So right up front, before I start with a client, I'm going to ask them, you know, what outcome do you want from this? What does it mean to you? Why is that important? What happens if you don't change, right? And in our program, we have a whole section where we coach you and teach you how to ask the types of questions that get at this. But quite frankly, before I'm hired, if I don't hear a big enough goal, a big enough gap between where they are and where they want to be, I'm going to say that. I'm going to say, you know what? I don't understand why you'd want to hire me. It doesn't seem like this needs an outsider. And you know what? They might say you're right, in which case we don't have to waste each other's time. Usually though, they say, well, let me explain more. And the outcome that I'm looking for doesn't have to be just tangible financial benefits. Usually when I get hired, it's because of something behind the tangible, right? So I'll certainly ask, you know, let's say I'm not satisfied with my team's not engaged, I need some coaching on that. I'll certainly ask, what's it costing your organization? You know, what's your attrition? What's it mean? How much does it cost to replace someone? What's being delayed? You know, what are the business implications of this lack of engagement? But then eventually I'm going to get to, what does it mean for you? How does it feel? And usually that's why I get hired, is because the client has a hassle that's either making them look bad, it's stalling their career, it's taking too much of their time, it's causing too much stress. I need to know this, right? We're coaches. The original definition of coach is a vehicle that moves people from point A to point B. Today, we would not call Uber if we just want to go from one house to the house next door. But we would call Uber if we have a long way to go, where walking isn't justified, where we need a third party to help us. It's the same with coaching. So when we teach the process of coaching, under contracting, there's a bunch of stuff we have to cover. But for me, it's worth spending a lot of time on this, okay? Is there a big enough goal, a big enough outcome, a big enough problem so that you will get value worth, I used to say 5 to 10 times my fees, but now I'll say 10 times. And this is not a big deal for me. And hopefully it's not a big deal for you, right? I came from the consulting world where, you know, most consulting firms I know today that are of top caliber you can't even get them for less than $250,000 for an assessment. And then they're moving into $1 million to $2 million project, right? So for me, charging $25,000 is not a problem because it's a lot less than a consulting engagement, which by the way is one of the reasons why a coaching model is so powerful, because it's much more impactful and cost effective. But my point here is I used to have to find $10 million opportunities with clients to get hired, or $1 million opportunities. It's not that hard if you're working with leaders to find, you know, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 opportunity in both tangible and intangible benefits. That's not all we have to discuss in the contracting though, right? A key thing with coaching is confidentiality. I really don't want to take on a client unless there's agreement with the client and whoever's paying that everything that's said within the coaching conversation will be confidential, unless the client tells me they're doing something illegal or is going to hurt themselves or others. And of course, there's other terms we have to discuss. In your program, should you join us, I'll give you contracts, actual contracts, both external and internal, that lay out the whole scope, right? So you have those done already. The only other thing I'd mention with contracting is advocacy. One of the things I've had to learn the hard way over 20 years of doing coaching is I really don't want to coach someone inside an organization other than the owner, but somebody, you know, who's moving up through the ranks, unless there's advocacy. That is, it's not just myself and the client as an island trying to fight against the organization to help them succeed. I want to know that their manager is on board. There's someone from HR usually on board, that the organization sees the client as someone who has high potential and can move up, so that it's not just me, an outsider with an isolated client trying to support them, right? Now, the client might pay out of pocket and that could be different, but when the organization's paying, or, you know, if you're an internal coach, same thing. Okay, so we're going to take a lot of time, at least I take a lot of time beforehand to contract. A mentor of my own, he used to say, if the courtship feels lousy, the marriage is going to be terrible, right? If the courtship is hard, the marriage is going to be terrible. So I spend a lot of time up front to make sure that the client and I and any sponsors are on the same page, and we have that really big gap, that big point A or point B. If you don't have a clear goal, and if it's not big enough, you're going to have really mushy coaching. And I think there's a lot of really bad coaching out there that starts bad because the coach just wants to get hired to sit around and ask never-ending, open-ended questions, hoping that the client has something that will come up. It doesn't work that way. Okay? Any questions about either of these two things that we've talked about? And again, we're just on the theoretical process of coaching, right? We haven't even gotten to the fun part, in my opinion, which is the practical part, the part that gets you hired. You could put your questions in the chat. Doesn't seem like we have any, but while you're typing, let's see, Jamie says, is this just a cost filter? Why won't you support people who don't currently have advocates? Can you help them build advocacy? Again, it depends. If I'm paid out of pocket and someone feels like they don't have advocacy, we have a whole set of tools in our program about how to build effective professional relationships up, down, and across an organization. But where I've been burned earlier in my career as a coach is when, for instance, HR just sort of hires me to shift the burden of a problem with a manager or a leader to the coach. And that's not what I want to do. I want to make sure everybody's on board. Coaching to me is a big privilege, right? It's not about the last resort before an organization hires people. For me, coaching is a privilege. If I'm going to coach someone in the organization, I want to make sure there's support. It's not my job to do that. And if the client doesn't have support, we could certainly talk about that in the coaching. But, you know, I've had at least one, the reason I bring this up is because I had a client who was all excited. He did great work in the coaching and he got burned. The organization burned him. Okay. How do you figure out if the person has advocacy? You ask, right? Again, I take a lot of time before I let someone hire me. So I'm going to talk to the sponsor and I'm going to ask them. I'm going to talk to my client. Okay, as Mary's saying, I had a fun one. HR asked, you know, said, we need you to fix or fire this guy. That's not what coaching is. That's a, what do they call that? A PIP, a performance improvement plan, or a progressive discipline. The rest of what you see here is pretty straightforward, right? We're going to assess, we're going to coach, track, adjust, succeed, and celebrate when we hit some milestones. I always build a follow-up into my coaching so that even if the engagement ends, the client and I still agree to meet in 2 months or 3 months to see how things are going. It's a great marketing approach, but it also has integrity, and make sure that we have a free complimentary coaching session built in for anything the client wants to follow up. And finally, I'm always looking for, you know, what else, right? To me, an ideal client is somebody who's growing. Their organization is growing, they're growing. And so we could find that next issue. It's not about codependency because we're always finding new issues, new situations. And my goal is to be a trusted advisor in the inner circle with my client. Okay, so this is theoretical. I find this interesting. It's how coaches can talk about coaching. Let me talk about the process of coaching in a way that will set you up as credible. To my knowledge, no other program talks about this in this way. but I do because I learned it as a consultant. One of the problems with coaching as an industry, and one of the reasons if you're already successful as a professional, you're credible, you have a good story to tell, you have a track record of success. One of the reasons you can do circles around many of the coaches who are out there today is that many of the coaches who are out there today don't know how to think this way. They don't have a results-driven, value offering approach the way that you and I will. And so let me tell you the story about a guy named Dave. I'll switch the slide in a minute because I don't want to give away the outcome. But for a while I worked with a guy named Dave, and this was in consulting. It wasn't in coaching yet, but I'm going to apply what I learned from Dave to coaching. And so Dave and I would go around and we would work with some top Silicon Valley companies. And what Dave would do is he would carry around a yellow legal pad. So let's say he goes into, I remember we went into the number 3 person at a big Silicon Valley company, one of the top 5, you would know the name. And he asked them, what issue do you want to resolve? And he'd ask the great questions about the scope, point A to point B, to really make sure that the client was serious and had a big enough issue to justify, Dave and his company working with this individual. At a certain point, Dave took out his yellow notepad and he says, I think I can help you, right? There's 2 ways you can do this. If you don't have clients yet, or you haven't had clients, you can say, look, I think I can help you. I have a 3-step process, 3-part process that I think will get you the results you want. Or you can say, I think I can help you. We've done this with a lot of other clients. Let me share with you the process we used with them. I think it will work with you. And he proceeded to draw on his yellow legal pad an X and a Y axis. And then he drew a little bar going across and he put a Roman numeral 1. And under Roman numeral 1, he wrote assess. He said, look, in the first phase, the first part of what we're going to do, we're going to assess your situation and your problem. And you're going to end with really good insights about the root cause, what's going on. And you'll probably also have insights about how to move forward and resolve the issue. That's 1. And then he drew another little arrow. And he put a Roman numeral 2. He said, look, in phase 2, we're going to design solutions. Right? Based on the assessment, we're going to have a really good understanding of what's going on. Now we can work together. We can design solutions. It's phase 2. I'm kind of rolling my eyes the first time I heard this. I said, there's no way this is going to work. It's so simple. I can't believe someone this successful at this level of this organization is going to fall for this. And then he drew another arrow, kind of, overlapped a little with phase 2. And he said, he drew a Roman numeral 3. He said, phase 3, we're going to implement. We're going to execute. Based on what we found and the solutions we've come up with, we're going to execute. We'll probably start that in parallel with phase 2. And as a result of this, you're going to achieve the goal. You're going to solve the problem you talked about, and we'll put in place metrics to prove it. How does that sound? And again, I thought this is the simplest, dumbest thing I have ever heard. There is no way this client's going to fall for it. And I was wrong. I was wrong. The client said, this is great. This is exactly what we're looking for. Tell me more. And so with this 3-phase process concept that consultants take for granted, my colleague Dave sold millions of dollars of engagements every year. And when I first got into coaching, I noticed no one does that. They all have this complicated stuff, or they have all this jargon and gobbledygook and pseudoscience, or they're making up words that normal clients in leadership don't use. They're sort of cringeworthy. I thought, no, why would you do this? Let's borrow from consulting and put this consulting skin, this process skin, on a coaching methodology. And I found that this has worked brilliantly for me. I won't put this on my website. I like Dave's approach of walking a client through, but I break coaching down into a 3-step process. And you can see at the bottom, does everyone, let me know if you don't see this on the screen. But right up front, we set goals. Every single coaching engagement I have, as we teach in the Center for Executive Coaching, is going to have a way to track and measure results, right? How we do that differs and varies depending on the goal we have with the client, depending on what they want to achieve. We can track results based on changing a behavior, based on changing their use of time, based on employee engagement scores, based on a project that needs to get done, based on a change initiative that needs to move forward, based on their confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10. There's many ways based on competency assessments we can do. And so you see, phase one, for me, I'm assessing not like a consultant. I'm not doing any analysis. Thank goodness. This is why I got out of consulting. I hated that part. But I'm going to work with the client. And among the things we might look at in a general leadership coaching arrangement is, first, of course, let's make sure your goals are, we're clear on your goals. I might look at performance reviews. It depends. I might not. I have a couple of nice assessments that can look at a client's thinking style, behavioral traits compared to other leaders. We give you a tool called the Leader's Dashboard. It's basically a one-page tool that gets everything down on one page that really matters to the client. Their mission, vision, values, performance metrics, key initiatives, key relationships, key development needs. It's really cool. It's a nice assessment tool. Often we'll interview their manager. We might even do a full 360-degree verbal assessment. I love nothing more than talking to a few people who know my client really well to understand what my client is doing well, advice for my client, what my client can do better. I might even observe my client in meetings, including Zoom meetings. So that's the assessment. Based on that, we're going to have, I call this nowhere to hide coaching. We're going to have a pretty good idea of what stands in the way of our client achieving their goal and how they can be a better leader. And so now we can move into phase two, which is designing solutions via coaching. It's not consulting. I'm not making recommendations, although I tend to have a hybrid approach where if the client wants advice, I can give it, but very sparingly, very carefully. I follow the wisdom in the book, The Advice Trap, which is a wonderful book to read. And so typically in my leadership coaching engagements, the client's going to pick one new leadership habit to build on. And then we'll find some situations they need to work on. For instance, if it's about engaging employees better or engaging their team better, we'll look at each member of the team and we'll come up with a plan to better engage that team member. If it's about building relationships up, down, and across, we might have to coach the client on who are your most important relationships and how can you improve them. But it could be about anything. Maybe they need to develop a new skill, put in place a new behavior. We're going to design solutions. And again, should you join the Center for Executive Coaching, you'll see there's already made coaching solutions. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do what so many coaches do, which is ask never-ending questions that go nowhere. Okay, we give you the areas of inquiry that are likely to come up. And then phase three, again, typically in parallel with phase two, implementation. Right? We're going to find a way to track results, track goals. We're going to have debriefs monthly or quarterly as needed. We can repeat some of the assessments we do. And again, there's a follow-up built in 45 days after the engagement ends. What I have found is that by having a process that's this simple, just 3 steps, 3 phases, I sell a ton more coaching engagements because my client knows that I have an efficient, effective process that gets results, and I can apply it to many things. I've coached a number of leaders in healthcare, and I have a very specific process that I can use to coach, for instance, a nurse manager or a group of nurse managers where we assess specific things. I don't have to do the work. I'm not a consultant, but usually organizations have data like patient satisfaction, employee engagement, by manager, by unit, overall productivity. I don't have to do anything. I used to have to. I don't have to now. As a coach, it's beautiful. My clients should have that and track that. Right, and then I have a whole approach. You can see that. I can even do strategic planning, which used to be the pure domain of consultants. I have a coaching model and a facilitation model that you can learn in this program, where it's 3 phases. Phase 1 is the big picture, answering some big picture questions. Phase 2 is, given all these questions and the answers, like what do we have to do to better serve our customers, have better products and services, beat the competition? What's our edge? Given that, where do we invest our time and resources? What are no more than 3 priorities that will be our strategic priorities, where we focus our time and attention? And how do we get the organization in phase 3 aligned and ready to implement that strategy? And this right here, this process is worth $50,000 to $60,000 when you do this well with a client. So imagine you have a sore knee and you need to replace your knee. You wouldn't go to the doctor and say, I need to replace my knee. And I think you'd be, if you did, and you'd be very dissatisfied if the doctor says, well, sit up here on the table. And the doctor said, well, so how would you fix your knee if you could fix your knee? What do you see as the best way to fix your knee? What advice would you give to a friend who had a knee problem? And yet this is what coaches do all the time. And it's obnoxious, and it causes cringing and eye rolling by clients because it makes it look like you don't know what you're doing. Of course, I would expect my knee doctor, what is that, orthopod, to say, Andrew, here's what we're going to do. First, we got to start with an x-ray. Odds are good. We'll also need an MRI. Based on that, we'll know what the best path is. If you do need a knee replacement, we can do that in a day, and then there'll be about 6 weeks of physical therapy until you get better. Coaches don't do that. It's the only profession left. Clients expect that you have an efficient, effective way to get results. And that's what this 3-step process does. Okay? Again, it's kind of a consulting skin. I'm still going to coach them. I'm still going to do the best practices of coaching. But what it does is give the client comfort that I know what I'm doing. I'm not just one of these weirdos saying, I don't know, what do you think? Which is what you learn in a lot of other coach training programs, and it's going to drive your clients crazy, and it's not going to put you at the top of the pack. Okay, so essentially, and again, if you join the program, I can give you these slides. For now, I'm just giving a very quick overview. I'll work with you. I work personally with our members to develop their coaching process, not to mention a coaching framework that we're not really talking about here. Those two things, the process and the framework, can lead to best-selling books, keynote speeches, and all the clients you can handle. So you can see there's different ways, you know, you can have a designer design this stuff, depending on, you know, how you think and how you like this. All right, let's see. There's a question about what was slide 4? Was it the strategy one? So I don't know that I have much to share, except, you know, a client comes to me and says, in fact, my very first client was a executive director of a nonprofit who said, you know, we've done a bunch of strategic planning, we can never implement it. And I said, well, I have a 3-step process. Would you like to hear about it, right? Just like Dave used to do. And he said, yes. And so I said, look, in phase 1, we try to answer the big picture questions, not so much with perfection, but to come up with a list of potential priorities. In phase 2, we narrow those priorities down so you know exactly where your organization will be focused. We want no more than 3 priorities. And in phase 3, we're going to work with you to make sure your organization is ready to implement. That's it. And he hired me. And in fact, my first 2 engagements were this, through a coaching/facilitation model. My next engagement was this, just leadership coaching. All right. So some of you are already asking, I'm already a member with another organization. Let me just share something real quickly, and then I'll go to the third way to look at this, okay? But I want to share with you, if you're already, you know, made the mistake of joining another program, forgive me for saying it that way, just go to For Seasoned Coaches and click Get Our Full Suite of Coaching Solutions here, okay? And that's where, if you want to join and you're not looking for full certification because you've already joined another organization, but you want to have a little bit more robust executive and leadership coaching toolkit, just click this For Seasoned Coaches, Get Our Full Suite of Proven Coaching Solutions. You don't have to pay for all the certification and everything else. And you know, we extract for you just this, okay? Anyway, let me go back to the presentation if I could. Any other questions about this before I move to one more way to think about this? And Polly says, I mentioned that I work with members to help them develop strategy. Can I schedule time with you to discuss these things outside of the weekly webinars? That would be awesome. Yes, that's part of the program. No other program gives, as far as I know, gives this level of support. We're boutique. I don't want to be the biggest. I want us to be the best. And because we focus on high-end professionals who are already successful, you know, we're not trying to be this cattle car of, you know, mid-level, low-end coaches. That's not what we're about. We want you to be the best. All right, I don't think I see other questions here. So let me share with you one more way of looking at this, okay? And let me set it up here. So just like I set up the other with deference to Dave, who, again, one of the most amazing salespeople of professional services nothing more than a legal pad, a pen, and a 3-part process. So the setup here, right, if you've come from other professions or hired consultants, you'll know that this idea of a work plan can lead to many, many, many pages. Like if you've ever seen an IT systems, integration project plan, they could be hundreds of pages with critical paths and different colored lines and dependencies. It's crazy. If you've ever seen a civil engineering project plan, especially when it's funded by the government, you'll see this requirement of hundreds of pages of documents. Even in consulting, management consulting, you'll often see a very thick document as a work plan. The beauty of coaching, another beauty of coaching, is you can get everything down on one page. And so let me show you this. I have, in the program, we take you through this both for one-on-one coaching and also group coaching. I'm just going to do it for one-on-one coaching here today to keep it simple. But look at how simple it is to create a coaching process. And if you have this one-page plan or something like it, you're in good shape. Now, I need to let you know that in this, I'm going to mention some assessments that I happen to use. You don't have to use these assessments. Think of them as placeholders. I happen to love them. I'll mention the Profile XT, the Checkpoint 360. I use the Genos International Emotional Intelligence Assessment. I love those. Just replace that with assessment. Don't worry about which assessment to use, as long as you use a highly validated leadership assessment. Maybe one that the client completes themselves and one that's what's known as a 360, you're going to be in good shape. So here it is. Let me walk you through it if it's okay with you, and then we'll take some questions. And again, please know I'm whipping through this, right? We're moving at lightning speed. In our program, we slow it down. We do case studies. We really make sure you know this material, and of course we can reach out and you can reach out and we can have conversations anytime you want. So you're already hired. Okay, let's make sure we know this. You've already been hired. So in session 1 with any client, if appropriate, I might take some time to just reconfirm the goals. This is often more important internally if you're an internal coach, but just let's review the goals and ground rules. Well, my clients, typically, we don't need to do this. They already know, they're on board, they're excited. And then in session 1, I just want to set up the assessments, right? So whatever assessments you do. In my case, I like what's called the Profile XT. It's one page, puts the client on a bell curve compared to other leaders on 10 behavioral traits, a couple of thinking styles and occupational interests. It's really powerful. But the other ones could be DISC, Hogan, Berkman, whatever, predictive index, whatever you might use, okay? I also want to do at least one 360 online. In the past, I've used the Checkpoint 360, which is in the Profiles family. I might use that for a middle manager. Increasingly with senior leaders, I really like the Genos Emotional Intelligence 360, right? So what we have now is one that the client fills out themselves, ipsitive, and one that others fill out with the client so we can get a sense of the client's self-awareness as well as how others perceive the client. I'll introduce this leader's dashboard. I believe we've covered this in another masterclass. So if you've been coming on these, you'll have seen that, but it's on one page. We get a sense of what's most important to the client's success, their mission, vision, values, key performance indicators, key projects or initiatives, key relationships, and one or two key development needs that they've already introduced. It's a wonderful way to keep the client focused and grounded on what matters most. And then again, I like to do some sort of verbal 360 with every client. And so we're going to identify, typically 8 to 10 people to interview. If it's a small company, it won't be that many. So we get everything set up. And then we could start with high-level coaching, right? I'm going to say, what would be a great use of our time, the rest of our time today? What would be a great outcome? Everything's outcome focused. What we teach you in this program is about how to bake value into just about everything you do with a client. Between the first session and what we'll call session 2, people are doing their homework, right? The client's completing their assessments. The people the client has identified is completing the 360s. Client's completing the leader's dashboard, and you, the coach, or I, if I'm the coach, am interviewing participants for the verbal 360. And again, in your program, we show you how to do a verbal 360 perfectly. It's really hard to do these right, to synthesize what you hear from a bunch of other people and then feed it back to the client so they're willing to hear it and they don't get defensive. Too many coaches blow it right there. So we have a whole set of webinars on how to do a proper 360, as well as how to review assessments with clients, right? What I hear from a lot of internal coaching organizations is we know how to do the what. We know how to spit back an assessment, but we don't know how to get to the so what. Should you join our program, you're going to learn how to get from what the data says to powerful insights that move you and the client forward to be better. So session 2, which often is sessions 2, 3, and 4, because it can take a while to review these assessments, we're going to go through the findings. And for me, I don't want to overwhelm the client with tons of assessments, right? I've worked with some coaches who have they have like a manila envelope, 2 inches thick with assessments. You know, if you could be any sandwich, what kind of sandwich would you be? Who wants to answer that question? How condescending. I've seen that question, right? I just want to do enough. I don't want to boil the ocean. I want to do enough so that the client has insights and can move forward. The best coaches in the world, the highest paid, actually do the least. I repeat that. The top coaches in the world get paid the most for doing the least. They only meet monthly with their clients, and they typically identify just that one thing that's going to have maximum impact on performance. Yes, we talk about many other things with the client, but you really want to get focused. You know, what's this one thing that if we do this together, you're going to be a better leader. You're going to get much better results. So that's what we're trying to do is synthesize these results, asking great questions of the client so that they come up with the insight about here's the thing. And of course, we can have a dialogue about that. And then look at this, it's pretty straightforward. Sessions 3 on, I tend to meet weekly, by the way, with my clients for an hour the first couple of months, and then we back off to every other week and even monthly. Just so you know, I do a 6-month engagement. That's kind of short for the market these days. For coaching, we tend to see 9 to 12 months. What I like to do is have my client choose whether or not to renew at the end of 6 months. Sometimes my clients need a break. Sometimes they want to go to monthly. But, you know, 80 to 85% of my clients continue right on. 90 to 95% continue at some point. Okay? And so session 3, the coaching begins. We've identified that one thing, especially one behavior that can help the client be even better. So we're going to put in place a behavioral coaching process. And our program teaches you this process. It's based on cognitive behavioral psychology. It's grounded in research. It works, and it's simple. And then we're also going to talk about current people, situations that are related to the client's goals, right? I don't care for coaching, and we don't teach coaching in this program that's general or that gets into drama. What we want our clients to do is, you know, for this issue that you have, let's pick a situation or a person where it's coming up. Let's get specific. Let's pre-plan. Let's make sure that when you go into that next time, you're going to go in powerfully and you're going to get the outcome you want. We want to make it specific so that performance shows up in the job. And every once in a while, we'll review the leader's dashboard. At the end of every month, the client's going to receive some sort of feedback or data that we review about whatever they're trying to change. Often it's a behavior change. If it's business coaching, we have a whole dashboard that we can look at with the client to see whether they achieve their goals for the business. Again, we customize this to the client's needs, and by the time you complete our program, you'll know how to coach different clients in different situations to get them where they want to go. Every 3 months or so, as appropriate, we'll conduct a review of the coaching with the client and any sponsor. Okay, and I have a whole methodology for this. We give you a template to use. But the bottom line is I don't break confidentiality, right? The client and I write any reports for the sponsor together. I'm setting the client up for success. And really the purpose of these is to get feedback from their advocates, right? Their manager, their client. How can we be better? Are they seeing changes in performance? Where are they? Where aren't they? What new advice would they give? Okay. What is said it's like Las Vegas, right? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in the coaching session stays in the coaching session, because performance should show up outside the coaching session. That's what coaching's about, right? If you're not coaching clients to demonstrate a marked improvement in how they show up, the impact they have, the performance they're achieving, you're not coaching right. Every 6 months, depending on the engagement, we might conduct a second 360 to confirm that the client has improved. The other thing that I'll do sometimes with my clients as time permits, like I've worked with leaders that might not have had formal leadership training, right? Good examples are physicians who have been catapulted into leadership roles in a healthcare delivery system. Technologists. There's a member of the Center for Executive Coaching. He works with somebody who comes out of the sanitation field, and he's just a natural leader. He, in fact, runs now. He's the leader of an association of people in that industry, but he's had no formal leadership training. And so what he does, and what I'll sometimes do, is we'll just take out a topic. You know, sometimes you can look at best-selling business books or use SoundView book summaries, or you can use the tools that are in our program and just bring up topics. I'll also do this when I'm coaching high potentials, especially in group coaching. And so the coaching can if you do this, can become a hybrid where it's leadership development / coaching. It's very powerful. I don't do it all the time. But again, just so you know, as time permits, if there's extra time at the end of a session, you know, maybe you could say, hey, let's talk about Power Base, or let's talk about strategy, or, you know, what's a leadership topic that interests you? You know, here, let's read this book about teams and talk about it, or here's our team framework, okay? So that's basically it. Group coaching, we also teach. It's a little bit different than this, but not much. Group coaching is very much in vogue right now because essentially the coach can make more while the organization pays less per person, right? So if I charge $25,000 for a CEO or COO to coach them, for vice presidents or directors, you know, maybe I charge the organization $10,000 for each person, and we get 5 in the room, and so now I'm making $50,000 for the same, pretty much the same or a little bit more work. And so there's a couple of adjustments that happen, but overall it's still very similar. Do you see how simple this is? There's a setup, there's some assessments, and then we move right into coaching to come up with answers, implementation, and tracking. So this is just a different way, really, to look at this. But you know, depending on how you absorb information, maybe you like one or the other a little bit better. Okay. So there you go. 3 ways to look at the coaching process. This theoretical talk shop way. My favorite approach, which is the 3-step process to get results. And then I like also for you to have a 1-page coaching plan so you can see how simple coaching really is. It's the most straightforward, I think, of any professional service, because you can get everything down on 1 page. Okay, so with that, let's take whatever questions you have, whether about our program or about coaching, and especially the process of coaching. I see a couple of really good questions that are here. And again, I want to remind you, I'll put it up here. If you want to get in touch, please do so. You can just click the contact page on our website here. But, you know, take a look at how to get certified. If you're a seasoned coach, see our suite of proven coaching solutions. If you want to get certified, again, we're now filling, and we will sell out. We always do. Our July 26th through 28th seminar. We'll have another one in September and another one in December. Okay, but anyway, let me get to the contact page so you see how we are. Okay, so let me see. I see some questions in the chat. Let me take those. Let me take this off record too. Those of you listening to the recording, if you'd like to talk more, just reach out.